My dear conservative friends, we need to talk. This is more of an intervention than anything else. You have to stop protecting institutions that are committed to destroying your way of life. The university system hates you. Yes, you. It always has, and it will continue to hate you until it's dismantled brick by brick and replaced with something else, something better. The universities are just never going to be into you. And if two factions of the left want to destroy themselves while shutting down college campuses, well, that's what we in politics like to call a win. You don't need to ride to the rescue. You aren't the white knight in this scenario. Just grab some popcorn, enjoy the show. I promise this is going to work out in your favor if you'll just let it. Protests surrounding the Hamas terror attacks on October 7th in Gaza and the subsequent response by Israel have now raged on college campuses across the country for weeks. The establishment left is nominally pro-Israel due to a legacy attachment to the nation and the need to maintain a healthy relationship with major donors. The more radical leftist vanguard has drunk deeply from the well of wokeness and made the natural connection between anti-European decolonization rhetoric and Israel, which is now identified as a white colonial oppressor. Jews have been stalwart Democratic voters for a long time and have avoided being dropped to the bottom of the party's oppression hierarchy, but the arrangement is now being called into question by other members of the coalition. The left has imported and elevated a generation of immigrants who feel no attachment to America's past relationship with Israel, and many in the vanguard come from cultures that are openly hostile to the Jewish nation. The Progressive Coalition has always been tenuous, and October 7th created an eruption across the most critical fault line that has manifested as an intra-leftist civil war playing out on college campuses. Now, most opposing political parties would recognize this as a gift from on high, but the Republicans have several specific hang-ups that compel them to solve this problem for their opponents. The conservative impulse to protect institutions is an admirable one. In a healthy society, institutions are the formal structures that help to enshrine a culture's values and transmit them to the next generation. But American society is not healthy, and the long march through the institutions perpetrated by the left has installed a hostile ideology deep into the heart of the university system. College campuses are not places of learning where promising young minds develop the leadership skills necessary to forge a brighter future. These institutions are progressive seminaries where students go deeply into debt to learn how to hate their parents, religion, and nation. This ideological poison is then distributed through every major corporation, piece of entertainment, and news headline as college graduates take their places as leaders and managers throughout society. Conservatives have complained for decades that public schools are hostile indoctrination centers designed to secure leftist hegemony, and they were correct. But when the pandemic hit and shut down those enemy institutions, conservatives became the most vocal proponents of reopening them. That very same dynamic is currently playing itself out on university campuses. Conservatives may complain about the education system, but they're ultimately defenders of the status quo and would rather see these institutions continue to operate, even if they're calling for the literal destruction of the United States. Part of this response is linked to the natural and admirable conservative impulse towards order. Conservatives recoil at the idea of violence and intimidation on these campuses, and where Republican governors are in charge, they should absolutely protect the physical safety of all students. But there's also an impulse among many Republican politicians to punish public criticism of Israel, and this is a serious problem. The right has spent endless hours, tons of YouTube videos, so many podcasts mocking the leftist idea of hate speech and safe spaces. But now many GOP politicians are suddenly obsessed with implementing exactly those policies. Governors like Greg Abbott of Texas and Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma, for example, have come out in favor of cracking down on quote unquote hate speech and anti-Semitism in the wake of these protests. It's becoming very hard not to notice that most of these politicians took no action as anti-white rhetoric and demonstrations dominated academia for the last decade, to the point where that ideology has now made its way into several best-selling books. The Democrats are already facing a critical election in which they have to run a deeply unpopular dementia patient against a former president who maintains a strong base of support despite being hit with an endless barrage of fake criminal charges. The very last thing that the left wanted was a civil war on college campuses that exposed the disastrous contradictions at the heart of its coalition. The only thing, and I really mean the only thing, that could possibly rescue the Democrats from this nightmare scenario would be footage of Republican governors sending in police to violently suppress protesters. This would bail out the establishment and allow mainstream liberals to put the woke vanguard in its place while pointing at the GOP as the real enemy, a unifying symbol of authority to hate. Look, I know that the gut instinct of the right is to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, but the GOP must sit on their hands and just let this play out. Try for a moment to imagine any scenario where two factions inside the right are destroying each other and humiliating themselves in an election year, and the left just dives on the grenade for the conservatives. You can't, because it would never, ever happen. Again, red state governors should maintain the safety of those under their care, but otherwise leave leftists to their own devices. Let those factions fight. In the worst case scenario, what? Some kids don't get to attend Hate America 101? And in the best case, things get so bad that the Democratic coalition rends itself asunder while desperate parents plead for the right to reform the university system from the ground up. I am begging you, my conservative allies, just take the easy win, just this once. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now is a great time to do so. If you'd like to get these broadcasts as podcasts, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the Auron MacIntyre Show on your favorite podcast platform. And when you do, leave a rating or review. It really helps with the algorithm magic. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter or Gab or Substack or Instagram, if you'd like to watch these videos on Rumble or Odyssey, the link to do all of that is down below in the description. I'm very excited about the release of my new book, The Total State. It's coming out next week on Tuesday, May 7th. If you want to get it on release day, you need to pre-order on Amazon, or you can go to other fine retailers like Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. And of course, you can read all of my columns and watch all of my shows over at The Blaze. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, I'll talk to you next time.